Welcome to the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast, where we interview the world's leading CEOs, business executives, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and authors. Our mission is to learn the strategies and tactics that have helped our guests succeed in business and life and share those lessons with you so that you can become the Bulletproof Entrepreneur. My name is Chi Odogu, and I'm the co-founder and COO of Odogu Media Group. Odogu Media Group is a podcast marketing and new media agency that helps corporations create and amplify their story via high-quality branded audio content that builds a community of highly engaged fans who are their ideal clients for their premium products and services. And now, without further ado, on with the show. This episode is brought to you by the B2B Sales Mastery Summit. If you want to learn how to grow your sales using guerrilla B2B sales strategies, then you will definitely want to check out this summit. 10 world-class entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and sales and marketing professionals are going to share their best-kept secrets on how to grow your sales in the B2B space. You'll learn things like how to leverage your skills, how to apply LinkedIn to get non-stop leads, how to prospect and win, how to be a go-giver so that you can get more clients by actually serving them first, and of course, the art of closing the deal with your prospects and clients so that they'll feel like they're doing business with their long-lost friend. I have speakers coming from the likes of Dan Locke, Bob Berg, Paul Brody, Kemanzi Constable, Josh Elledge, Dr. Cindy McGovern, Tayo Roxon, Monique Russell, and Karen Yankovic. They'll be sharing their best-kept secrets on how you can succeed and win in your B2B sales goals in 2020. The summit starts November the 18th and 19th and will feature 30-minute actionable keynote addresses to equip you with all the tools and strategies you need to succeed. If you want to sign up, go to www.b2bsamas.com or www.b2bsalesmasterysummit.com to sign up for the B2B Sales Mastery Summit. I can't wait to see you there. Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast. My guest today is Marwan Mery. Marwan is a professional negotiator. He works with businesses, governments, and organizations and NGOs of any size to resolve complex situations, which may include critical cases, social conflict, commercial negotiations, diplomatic relations, and patient-physician relations. In 2013, he and his co-founder, Laurent Combalbert, founded the Negotiator Agency and Pacificat Network. Shortly after, the worldwide team of negotiators were dispersed around the globe. They opened offices from Edinburgh to Dubai, and they've been helping several organizations around the world with complex negotiation situations. He is an author of several highly successful publications and a lecturer at HEC in Paris. He is the chairman and chief instructor of HCNIA, which is the Hostage and Crisis Negotiation International Academy that trains and raises the awareness of elite units around the world for peaceful solutions to critical situations. And he and his co-founder were the subject of the hit CBS TV show Ransom. So I am pleased to have Marwan on the show today to tell us a little bit more about himself, his business, and his life experiences as one of the world's leading negotiators in complex situations. So Marwan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good evening.
Awesome, Marwan. So now let's get into the conversation because I read your lengthy background here and you've received a lot of accolades. You've been in the media several times. You and your co-founder were the subject of the TV show Ransom. But tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Right. Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me here. Well, I've negotiated now for 22 years. I started my career in businesses, working on social and sales negotiation. And then, but there's a part of my life I can tell. The other part, unfortunately, I cannot tell for obvious reasons.
Of course.
But basically, I was approached and I had to work on the confidential stuff and dealing with the critical situations. Could be like kidnapping, ransoms, extortions, confinements, retrench people, and so on and so forth. So basically, so my job was to deal with complex situation where there was not much hope left. And 7 years ago, in 2013, Laurent Combalbert, my partner, and myself, we created ADN Group, right, which is the first negotiation agency in the world. We have basically negotiators all around the world. And so basically we called in when businesses, NGOs, and even the UN have to deal with a complex situation. So my experience is roughly 22 to 23 years of negotiation, and my partner, Laurent, it's the same. His background is from tactical units, the RAID in French, which is the equivalent of the SWAT team in France. And we decided basically to aggregate our skills to help businesses and governmental agencies. So that's roughly my background. And on the day, if I just have to talk about, give you a specific example on a yearly basis, for example, on a yearly basis, I conduct, run, or assist nearly 50 negotiations.
Wow.
So 50 negotiations per year, which is quite a lot because basically it's 50% of my time, and the rest of it is dedicated to transmitting knowledge, such as training and teaching and giving conferences and for different organizations. And Laurent, basically, it's roughly the same. 50% of our time is on the field, and the rest of it is transmitting knowledge.
Now, why is it so important for you guys to spend 50% of your time teaching and giving back in that particular way?
Yeah, I think it is because basically we've learned a lot from the field. We've learned a lot from crisis negotiators. We've learned a lot from professional negotiators, and now I think our responsibility is to transmit what we've learned, and just to help future generation deal with complex situation. Because the thing is, when people are left by themselves, when they have to deal with critical stuff, most of the time it's super difficult for them because emotions take the upper hand and take over on reason. So basically we tell them that there are tools, right? There are strategies, tactics and techniques, and we can help you with that because we've faced previously those kind of situations. So it's important for us now to transmit knowledge.
Awesome. So now I want to talk a little bit more. I know your work in Kidnap and Ransom is highly sensitive, so I don't want you to share what you're not willing to share. But in terms of just the broad specifics, you've mentioned that crisis situations are highly complex, and people that do not have the knowledge and the skill set usually go in leading with emotions first. So in a situation like a kidnap, for example, are kidnappers fundamentally the same across the board in your experience, or are there nuances and differences between kidnapping groups from different regions around the world?
Right. There are loads of kidnaps for ransom all around the world. So basically, the official number is roughly 100,000 kidnaps per year.
Wow.
Worldwide, right? The official number is nearly 1 million, right? But most of the kidnaps, you and myself, we don't hear of them because that's what we call a kidnap flash. It just lasts for a couple of hours. You have a lot of that in Mexico, in Colombia. For example, you have doctors waiting for your children at school. So basically, they kidnap them, and they're going to demand $500 to the family. And they say, if you tell the police, we'll kill your children. So $500, what you would do? Basically, you will pay. We are called in when ransom demands are basically superior to $100,000, and when you're covered by what we call an insurance policy, a kidnap and ransom policy. So when a kidnap happen for an employee around the world, we can be called in. The good news about kidnap for ransom is that most of the time, the motivation is money, right? All around the globe. So basically, those are criminal groups, and they demand money for a lot of things. But sometimes it can be terrorists as well, which is another issue, because when we have to deal with terrorists, and when those are terrorist demands, we do not deal with that, because we only working, if I may say so, with criminal and when they are money driven. So they will ask for something huge, and our job is to make sure we pay as minimum as possible and to get the hostages safe and sound. So basically, you could go to Yemen, you can go to Somalia, you can get to Colombia, you can go to China, India, right? Most of the time, right, the basic motivations is money. So, which is a good news. The good news is as well is as long as the hostage is alive, right, the hostage retains its value. So that's why it gives us a leverage in negotiation. Now, there's you have to deal with lots of complexity with ultimatums, threats, pathological profiles, the difficulty to get the upper hand on this kind of situation. But if we manage to settle a deal, we might get the hostages safe and sound.
Interesting. So now, talking about, staying on that topic for a little bit, I know that in the United States, there's the no concession policy, which came around in, I believe, 1973 or so, when 2 U.S. diplomats were kidnapped in Saudi Arabia, in the Saudi embassy in Sudan. And Richard Nixon came out and said, you know what, we're not negotiating, we're not going to pay blackmail. And this kind of unofficially now became the policy of the United States. And you see it in the movies. The U.S. government does not negotiate with terrorists. They don't change foreign policy. Now, does the no concession posture reduce the risk of kidnap and ransom, especially for people from these countries like the US or the UK working in international situations like Somalia, Yemen, and what have you?
No, unfortunately not. Right? We when we have to deal with a kidnap and ransom, you can find any cultures, any nationality when we regarding the hostages. So no, it does not reduce that. And we have to understand one thing is that the majority of the countries would say that, of course, we should never pay any ransom, because on the principle, we agree to them, of course, because the more you pay, the more you feed the business. But are you ready to sacrifice the hostages on the altar of the fight against kidnapping? It's a difficult answer, because there is no good or bad answer. It's a dilemma, right? But so we consider that if we deal with criminals, and if lives is at stake, and if what matters the most is to save the hostages, maybe we can buy ourselves a bit peace in our heads if we manage to get them safe and sound, paying as minimum as possible. But there's another question about that. When you have those countries who say, okay, that say we should never negotiate with terrorists or with criminals, I think the posture is wrong. Why? Because negotiating is not about bargaining, it's not about making concessions, or so on and so forth. We do negotiate. Why do we negotiate with terrorists sometimes? It's to store for time, right? It's to collect intel on the ground. It doesn't mean we're going to give in. But negotiating helps you to get additional information so that the tactical units will be more prepared for the final assault. So if ever there's an assault to carry out. So basically, there's a misconception about negotiation, because people that consider that when you negotiate, you have to give in or have to make concessions. No, I have negotiated with people, right? And I have never given them anything. And the thing is, I extracted information. I got to know better the people I could talk to. I could understand their real motivations, and then I could like initiate my strategy. But it doesn't mean I would give in something. So should we negotiate with them? Yes, we should negotiate with them. It doesn't mean we should give in what they want, which is another issue. So when those countries take this posture, they're right to take this posture, if I may say so, because we don't want to feed this business.
Yeah.
But what is important is that in the shadow, we have to deal with those things properly, because we don't want to have people dead. That's the thing as well.
Okay, so it's good to take the posture, but at the same time, it's also good to be smart about it in the background when you're working to resolve the situation. Now,
exactly.
I know you guys work around the world and across the globe, and I personally, I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, and in the last 10 years or so, it seems like there's been an explosion of this kidnapping business. So not the small one, like you said, for $500 and what have you.
Yeah.
So now in those situations, I think it's similar to Mexico and Colombia as well. But in that kind of a situation, what should the government implement as a policy to squash these little kidnappings? Because they kidnap you and it's literally for $50, not even $500, you know? So how can the governments try and strangle this thing and cut this thing out of business?
Right. What you say is perfectly correct. When you compare Nigeria, Yemen, Venezuela, Colombia, and those cities, right? You have maybe 120 kidnaps per day, right? If you add up all those countries, so which is a lot. The problem in those countries is that most of the time governments are corrupt, meaning when we have to deal with certain situation, unfortunately, we cannot tell the authorities, because we had experiences when we considered that warning the authorities might be a good idea. Unfortunately not. What happened is that the authorities killed the hostage takers, and they decided to be the new captors, new abductors, and then you had to negotiate with the authorities. So basically, unfortunately, the problem and the major problem is that in those countries, first we have to restore justice, a police force, and then we can deal with that. But unfortunately, in those countries, it is not the case. That's why kidnappers, captors, abductors, hostage takers, right, live freely, if I may say so.
Yes.
So first we have to restore, right, the tools of democracy, the tool of republic, and then we can deal with those guys. But unfortunately, it's not the case. That's why things are not moving in a good way, in the right way.
And in cases where it's the higher stakes negotiations, take for example, you're working on behalf of an oil company. If you're talking to a kidnapper, for example, does the fact that having you, a foreigner, come in to negotiate now change the dynamics of the situation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. While we have now the largest negotiation network in the world. We have more than 100 negotiators split all around the world because for obvious reason, we don't talk the language. There are a lot of things in the culture that we can miss. So basically, we have local negotiators based in Africa, in India, in China, in Asia, in South America, where we can call upon them, right? And basically we will remain in the shadow, Laurent and myself, right? And we will be in charge of the strategy, and they will be in charge of the tactics, because of course, for obvious reason, they're on the field and they have much more information that we can have. So if negotiation has to be handled in English or in Spanish for my partner, we can directly negotiate with those hostage takers. Unfortunately, if it is carried out in another language, we don't have the skills, we don't have the knowledge, so that's why it will be handed over to a local negotiator.
Okay.
But it's going to be trained on what we have developed a tool with Laurent. It's a standard called Pacificat. It's a 9-letter acronym. Pacificate, if I may say just one word on it, 9 letters to help you prepare, conduct, close, and debrief any negotiation. That's the standard we use when we have to deal with critical cases.
Okay.
That's the standard we use on diplomatic issues, social conflicts, huge sales negotiation, and even patient relation when we have to deal with patients who refuse to take the treatment.
Okay.
So so basically all our teams are trained on this single standard, meaning we have the same language. It's the same backbone. So basically, it's easy for everybody within the team then.
Okay. So I love how you brought this up, because this is a good segue. So could you break down what that whole principle is of Pacifica? So take, for example, somebody that's listening to this somewhere around the world, they don't have access to come and meet you guys and take your training. What is this backbone that they can actually work around or use to work?
Right. Laurent, my partner, and myself, we have been trained many times, either by tactical units or by businesses. And we realize one thing is that when you have to deal with complex situation, there is no good answers, only good questions. Okay. Only good questions. Why? Because there's one factor that you can never put in any equation, is the human factor. Everybody behaves differently according to the situation. So meaning it will only be your ability to ask yourself relevant questions to deal with the situation. And the standard we created, the aim of the standard was not to give like definite and rigid answers, but it will help you to ask yourself relevant questions and give you powerful tool to deal with this complexity without suffering from it. So this 9-letter acronym, if I should mention what it is power and leadership. Analyze the context, chart the actors, identify the strategy, form a team, influence and relationship, close the negotiation, acquire from knowledge, from experience, and transmit knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at the first letters, right, you will find Pacificate. And we wrote a big book on it, which is called A Negotiator. Up to date, it's only translated. It has only been published in French. It's 660 pages on Pacificate, right, to help you deal with any negotiation in the world. Normally, next year it's going to be translated into English, which give your followers the opportunity to get to know more about the standards.
Awesome. And I guess we'll be looking forward to that next year in 2020 once the book gets translated to English. So diverting from your work now and you sharing the principle of Pacifica, how did the TV show come about? What inspired you guys to say, hey, you know what? Let's dive into the TV business.
Right. It was all about an opportunity. You know, our job, we remain in the shadow. Yeah. That's basically our job, right? And it all started with my partner, Laurent, right? He was in a plane sitting next to a girl who happens to be a French producer. So that basically Laurent talked about our job, and she was like, if I may say so, mesmerized about our job, a bit fascinated because you have a lot of TV show about that. And she said, okay, there's something we could do together. So Ransom, first season, is an American, French, German, and Canadian production. And so basically, they decided to create a show about our mutual experiences. So we spent hours and hours in London in the writing room. The writing room, what's the writing room? Basically, you had 6 script writers there, and for 32 hours, we shared our experiences, Laurent and myself. And so basically, they decided to keep the raw material and construct stories out of past experiences. So what you can find in the show is inspired by previous experiences, but it has been done for a show. In real life, things might be different, but that's basically how things started. It was just an opportunity in the plane, and then they came to us and they say, okay, it might be a great thing to do a show about you. And since we consider that we only lived in the shadow, it might be as well a good opportunity to shed light on a job that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting because, like I said earlier, before we started the conversation, I used to watch your show quite a bit, even up until this last season 3, and then I was like, wow, this is so fascinating that someone like this exists. And then I saw 2 of you make your cameo, I believe it was last season, and then I was I think I need to reach out to this guy. So I immediately contacted you guys, and then I was like, wow, I'd love to get to know more about you, and I'm so happy we're sitting down today, because a lot of the stories in the TV show, you see a lot of technology, the whole team working around. Does that show up in real life? Do you use the same type of technology and all that stuff? Because I know it's highly Hollywood and fictionalized, but you kind of want to wonder and say, wow, is this actually how you guys do your job? Create
we'd love to. We'd love to. But unfortunately, it's not the case. What is relevant is that we have a team. We're never alone, which is true, because, of course, with all by yourself, you cannot face with all the complexity of a kidnap or an extortion. But unfortunately, we don't have all those advanced tools and all that they can have. Yes, we have some tools. Yeah, we can have microphones. We can have hidden cams. We can have those stuff, but basically it's limited. But to tell you the truth, we don't need that advanced tools. We're fine with what we have. Yeah.
So what was your most memorable experience creating this TV show and you guys showing up on the big screen around the world?
Right. I can tell you what was. Yeah, I can tell you. I was held hostage years ago, and it was a difficult experience, right? It lasted for 5 hours, right? And I had to negotiate as a hostage, which was a difficult part, and it took me 4 hours and 30 minutes, right, to get us out of here. We were 11 hostages, right, in a gambling joint, an illegal gambling circle. So basically nobody could get us there because the place was not supposed to exist. So I had to negotiate for life. So this episode in my life remained embedded in my mind. And if you look at first season of Ransom, you remember Eric Beaumont, who plays our character, is held hostage.
Yes.
And and that's basically, I think it's a good reflection of what happened to me. So that was something memorable, because it was like how should I put it? A hint. It was like a hint to something, a reference to something that happened to me in real life.
Interesting. And what did the actor playing you to? Because I know it's a composite character of you and Laurent. So what are some of the characteristics he took from you versus the ones he took from Laurent to make the character of Eric Beaumont?
Right, okay. Well, we have to be really humble to answer this question, because I don't want to show off, of course. It's difficult to answer. I think I'd like to talk about Laurent, because Laurent is one of the best negotiator in the world. I'm not saying that because we have a mutual admiration, but Laurent is always one step ahead, right? Is really good at strategy. He can think before others, and that's what Eric's. I think it's a great part of Eric. I think it reflects what Laurent is in real life. If I have to talk about myself, I'd say that when Eric's got to negotiate with this hostage taker, right? People people that know me, it could be hostage takers, or it could be a businesses, government. They say that I'm quite good at influencing people. How will I take the upper hand in a negotiation with advanced negotiation skills? So when you look at Eric, is really good at raising awareness, how it will induce change, how it will provoke change, how it will draw on the resources still available in the hostage taker, so that the solution he might offer might be accepted. So I think, the good mixture in strategy and influencer skills might be Laurent and myself that are reflected in the character of Eric Beaumont.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
And now you mentioned the situation where you were held hostage in the off the books gambling casino. Now, early in your career, you work as a behavioral analyst, and I think you still do, helping casinos catch cheats. Am I correct?
Yeah.
But you financed your college tuition by playing poker. So tell us a little bit more about, what you learned playing poker and how you translated that knowledge into helping casinos find people that are trying to rip them off in their gaming houses.
Yeah. My father was a great poker player, right? And at the time, before it was widely broadcast on TV, it was played in illegal gambling circles, right? And basically, it was in the hands of the mafia. So my father always refused to teach me how to play poker. So, of course, I did the opposite. And I learned by myself, played with friends. First, we played with matches. Then we played with coins. And I was a bit better than my friends. And I was fascinated by magic and magician. And then so I started to play cards, manipulate cards. And then I was a bit bored, and I decided to get to know another universe, the world of cheating, right? And I say, how can this professional cheat can crash casinos, can have their go bankrupt? And so I learned so much from professional cheats. It's a little world. There's basically 100 professional cheats in the world. So those guys, when they cheat, you can't see anything. They have legendary skills, and nobody knows them unless you know this little circle. And so I was fortunate enough to learn from two of them, and I manipulated cards for years and years, hours and hours. And this knowledge I had, I decided to help casinos protect against professional cheats. So basically, general managers from casinos for gambling circles would tell me, Marwan, is my casino well protected? So I would cheat for an hour at slot machines, blackjack, poker. If nobody could catch me, I will tell the general manager, your casino is not well protected. Then I will help the casinos, right, protect against professional cheats. And when I was a student, I played poker a lot. I was not cheating. It's important to say that. And since I was a bit better than others, at detecting lies, bluffs, and understand micro expressions, I put that in. I used that a lot, so it helped me pay my tuition. I paid all my school, my students' tuition with that. I studied at the Sorbonne University in France, Paris, and my holidays as well, and so on and so forth. It was good money. I played at night. 3 to 4 days per week, right? Because when you're 20, you can be tired when you go to school. Now I'm 44, it's a bit more difficult, and I don't play that much. Fortunately, I play like once every semester because my job is to negotiate, not to play that much. Yes.
Interesting. Now, talking about detecting lies and micro expression, I think this is a key skill because in today's world, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships, people are always frightened that, is my spouse cheated on me? Is my boyfriend cheating on me? Stuff like that goes on all the time. You have no idea. So in your words, if you could teach us a little something about how do we detect lies, take, for example, either in our interpersonal relationships or in our small business relationships where we're trying to buy something and somebody is trying to teach us. So teach us a little bit about the art of detecting lies and understanding and using micro expressions so we don't get cheated ourselves.
Right. Honestly, I need more than 4 hours to answer this question, so it won't be possible. Why? Because the thing is I've worked on lie detection for 24 years now, so that's why in the show there are hints about a lie detection, right? About micro expression, behavior analysis, and so on and so forth, because it all comes from that. But the Pinocchio syndrome does not exist, right? There is no universal sign of deceit, unfortunately. Okay. You have to work with what we call corroborating evidence, right? Okay. With one signal, that you can never tell if somebody is lying or not. So just one thing, when we work on lie detection, and unfortunately we do that on a daily basis, because in high-stakes situations, high-stakes negotiation, of course there are bluffs, manipulations, ultimatums, threats, and you have to assess the credibility of all that. So what we look into is there a discrepancy? Is there a gap between what you can say and what your behavior might display? So basically, those anomalies, that's what we call behavioral anomalies, might be hints, right? Might be signal that there's something wrong. It doesn't mean that people are lying, but we have to open our eyes wide. So let me give you an example. That's something I use a lot. If you ask somebody, 100,436 divided by 43, right? If I say, okay, what's the result? You will tell me, okay, I don't know, of course. And when you will do, I don't know, you will shoulder shrug, with your shoulder, you will shrug. Yeah. Right, of course, yeah, exactly. So basically, that's what all people do. Even if you ask a blind person, please give me this result, he will say, okay, I don't know, and he will shrug his shoulder. Now, if, for example, I would ask you something, and you tell me, I don't know, but without shrugging your shoulder, I would say, okay, there's something wrong. Because if I know that you shrug them all the time when you don't know something, and here you do not shrug anymore, you will try to control your body, meaning there's more than meets the eye. It doesn't mean that you are lying, but of course I will try to dig up to understand what is at stake. Okay. So basically, we're looking for behavioral anomalies.
Okay. Oh, very interesting. So you're actually just doing a test to exclude what is not normal from the person.
Exactly.
And then you now go from there. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Thank you.
Now, Marwan, as we start to wind down the show, I mean, it's been a pleasure talking with you for the past few minutes, and I think I could still go on, but I want to respect your time. So, as we start to wind down the show, could you, in your own words, for example, what has been some of the highlights and some of the most memorable things about your career thus far? And what do you think you could have done differently if you were to go back to do it again?
Right. Interesting question. I think I've never been asked such a question. The memorable experience, yes, is, as I told you, when I was a hostage, because it was so difficult. Yeah. There are negotiations that I failed, of course, and there are negotiations I will fail again. Even if our success rate is 98%, which is quite a lot, there are negotiations that we failed because we did not manage to understand the real stakes, right? The real interest of the opposing parties. So, and what happened is that when sometimes we fail in negotiation, in the coming months, we try to understand what did we miss. So basically, each and every of our negotiation is debriefed. Okay. So when we get to understand what we missed, yes, sometimes we'd like to rewind the tape of course, to go back to the past, but unfortunately, is not possible. But it increases our resilience, because the resiliency is your ability to overcome difficulties. And so the thing is there's one important thing for us, is that when we fail, we have to understand, why did we fail?
Okay.
I remember this phrase in Batman. You know, Batman Begins. You remember? Yeah, I loved it. It's when Bruce Wayne is like 10 years old, is playing in this big garden in front of this big mansion, and all of a sudden it falls in the well. There's a well. Yeah, exactly. And he get injured. So his father is taking a rope, right?
Yeah.
And just goes down the well, and just to help his son. And he says, Bruce, why do we fall? And he said, no, father, it's just to pick ourselves up. And that's the thing. When we fall, we have to understand why we fell. And if we fall, it's just to get up, right? And the thing is, if you don't understand why, unfortunately, you are bound to reproduce the same mistakes.
Yeah.
That's why we have to learn from the past. And that's the principle of debriefing. So I can't tell you the negotiations that we failed, because most of them we signed an NDA. Yeah, exactly. But just keep in mind one thing. Yeah, we debrief them all just to make sure we will not reproduce our past errors.
Awesome. And with that said, Marwan, we've reached the end of the episode. It's been such a pleasure having you here to share your story and teaching us more about what you do. I think it's super, super fascinating. I wish we could get your show back on Netflix or something else, but I mean, I'd love to see more and hear more about you guys and your work and learn more about what you're doing. But I just want to thank you for coming to share your story and just teaching us a lot more about negotiations and dealing with people on a personal basis.
Thank you very much as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the show today. If you love what you hear on today's episode of the podcast, go to iTunes and leave a review and a comment. It helps other great listeners like yourself find the show. And of course, you can always find more episodes of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur Podcast at www.odogwu.com.